Hello and welcome to Oak Road Hatter, where this week I'm joined by just Lewis Jones, as I think it all got a bit too much for everyone else on Saturday. How are you doing, Lewis?
Yes, all good, thank you, mate. Yeah, duo this week. We'll do our best, I'm sure.
Yeah, just the two of us, but we've got plenty to unpack from what was an absolutely shocking result on the weekend. I mean, if you don't know, where have you been? But I mean, Luton were absolutely put to the sword in Middlesbrough and were beaten 5-1. And a lot has been said since, and we're going to say even more. But before that, we've got our £25 voucher giveaway for our Oak Road Hatter merch. And there's three chances of winning. The first chance, subscribe to Oak Road Hatter on YouTube, like and comment on any video published between Sunday the 3rd of November and Friday the 22nd of November, which will be the Whole City preview pod. You have one chance to enter per episode, so if you like and comment on several episodes between those dates, you can multiply your chances of winning. The second opportunity is follow Oak Road Hatter on Twitter or X. Like and repost the competition tweet. This will be pinned on our profile, and tag 3+ people in the comments of the post. And finally, place any order between Sunday the 3rd of November and kick off for Luton versus Hull City at 3 p.m. on Saturday the 23rd of November. The more orders means more entries, so you'll have a better chance of winning. But we'll get straight into things, and we are going to have to talk about that 5-1 defeat, Lewis. Before the game, some of us were fairly optimistic. It looked like things are improving gradually after the Cardiff win. And then we saw the team sheet, and I'm sure you were surprised as anyone else when you saw that starting lineup.
A few weren't as surprising as we thought they would be, given the fact we thought we'd change, but I think there were a few interesting calls. I think Woodrow, again, that was a bit of a random one, considering we had Jacob Brown back, and apparently Joe Taylor is supposedly fit. It was just a decision to leave him out. That's got its own story behind it that we don't really know. But the biggest worry for me was that midfield of Chong, Walsh, and Baptiste. There is no first thought being all defend. There is not a single player in there. His first thought is all let's defend this. Kraus, to an extent, is like that. Nakamba is the one that is like that. So not seeing Nakamba in there as well was a massive surprise, considering the squad was rotated. And for me, he's one of, if not the best six in the division. I think the only one probably ahead of him is Ampadu. And as we all know, he's Leeds' star man, and when he plays well, Leeds play well. And generally speaking, when we went up, when the Canberra played well, we won, and then we got promoted. So an interesting lineup. I think the back five was fine. I personally would have kept Bell where he was just for that continuity. We conceded one goal against West Brom and no goals against Cardiff. So that was one goal in two games, which going off of this season's pretty good going. So yeah, it's an interesting lineup. I don't think there's any massively odd ones apart from maybe Woodrow and Nakamba not being in there. But I don't think anyone actually expected anything like what we saw.
Edwards did say he would rotate because of the number of games we were playing back to back. But yeah, that change, particularly the midfield, was really, surprising is one way to say it. Open is another way to say it. So it was certainly open when the game kicked off. Despite the result, we actually started the stronger team, in my opinion. I think we had the better chances in the opening 20 or 25 minutes, and we did well when we had the ball, but it was quite scrappy and there was very little quality from either side.
Yeah, there wasn't really, and I think that whole first half, but Borough didn't really play well. I've seen them maybe once this season. I think it's in the cup game as well, but I think we've all seen highlights. If you watch the highlights after a game that evening, they're a very good, very crisp side, and they were nowhere near like that in the first half. They were shoddy with their passing. They wasn't really creating much, and then out of nowhere they get their goal. I think we did start well and probably the better, but without any real threat to Senny Dieng in the Middlesbrough goal. Woodrow had that one shot from I think is about 25, 30 yards out. Some interesting goalkeeping to say the least to parry it away, but it was a shot on goal. Obviously, that chance that Elijah fell at his feet. and he tried to set someone up. I think as a striker in this, well, pretty much in the 6 yard box, why you're not taking a touch and shooting like Latte Laugh did at the other end, I don't know. But yeah, it was a promising start. There's no doubt about that.
And having Woodrow in there was obviously a completely different way of having to play to having someone like Morris or even Jacob Brown in there because whereas they are going to hold the ball and bring other players into play, he'll look for other options because he doesn't have the strength of Morris, which a lot of players, granted, do not have that strength. But something he does do is has efforts when he gets the ball. And we've very rarely seen players take efforts from range this season or last season, if I remember right. It was probably just Ross Barkley last season having efforts from outside the box, but it's not doesn't seem to be something we're doing. So for Woodrow to take that shot early on and test the keeper was a positive sign. And yeah, I agree. I'm not sure what Sonny Dieng was doing. It was straight at his hands, and he decided to just punch it. Um, yeah, questionable was one way to say it, but it obviously didn't prove to be an issue for them because he had a pretty easy day aside from one goal. Obviously, they did go ahead through Bergzorg, who I'll be honest, I didn't know very little about, but he seemed like a good player, and he was another. And they had a dangerous attack and midfield, which we spoke about in advance of the match, and we certainly didn't do anything to keep their midfield quiet.
No, we certainly didn't, and their midfield was very impressive. As we said in our preview, they were going to be tough to get through and also very tough to stop, and that proved to be the case. I spoke to Dana from the Borough Breakdown podcast before the game. She said, look out for Finn Azaz and Ben Doak. And of course, I think Finn Azaz got 2 goals and an assist, and I think Ben Doak got 2 assists. So I knew what to expect, and it came true. Look, they're a quality side, Borough, and I think the biggest issue they've had this season is consistency and not taking their chances, really. Ironically, in this game, they took pretty much every chance they had. I think they had something like 1.3 xg, which isn't massively high. Realistically, you could probably expect 2 goals most from that, but we conceded 5. So that's an issue in itself. That they were very impressive, and all credit to them because I think if we played like that every week, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in now.
Yeah, they were very, very efficient in front of goal. They only had 6 shots on target and obviously scored 5 of them. So it wasn't a great day at the office for Kaminsky either, who has generally been impressive for us over the last couple of seasons. Although I'm not sure you can blame him for many of the goals that actually went in. He's just had very little going on in front of him, I would argue, in terms of his defenders. We thought it was only going to be 1-0 at half time. And then just before this half time, Latte Laugh scored. And it was a very well taken goal.
Yeah, it was excellent. Maybe Ted and Mengi's defending was a bit questionable for that. I think, to be fair to him, he didn't expect him to pull it out of the bag. I don't think any of us did. I don't think the commentators did. I don't think anyone in the ground expected that to happen. So yeah, look, he's a professional footballer. He should be more switched on. But I've seen he's got a lot of flack, Ted and Mengi, for that goal, but also just in general, which to be fair, I don't agree with. He was linked away with a move to lovely Torino rather than lovely Luton. So you can understand that he's a bit pissed off about that. But let's remember the game before against Cardiff, he kept a clean sheet and was one of the best players on the pitch. Against West Brom, coming back from injury, very impressive. So I think a lot of the blame being pinned on him saying he doesn't care is not quite right. And everyone's got to remember he's a young lad. He's 22. It's not like he's a semi-experienced pro where he's in his 26, 27. He's 22 and it's probably his first proper full season, well, second proper full season after last year. He was at Derby before that, but it was a very broken up season with injury. So look, he should have defended it better. He'll know that himself. But I think you got to back the players. Look, it's tough with everything going on. But remember, he's a young lad. He's still learning to an extent, and I don't think many of the defenders are exempt from criticism that game. Not solely Mengi.
No, up until that point, well, the point of the second, especially the point of the second goal, I thought we looked fairly solid at the back. I thought Holmes was pretty good for the opening 25 minutes, 30 minutes. He's surprisingly good going forward for someone of his size. He does actually control the ball really well, which is, I know it's a cliche, but it's really surprising to see him stepping up into midfield and spraying passes. But that second goal, our heads were completely down. And I mean, even just from watching, I think you could tell that it wasn't going to be our day. Going 2 goals down away from home at Middlesbrough, it's just, yeah, it wasn't a great start. Obviously, when it came out for the second half, and the strange decision to take Amari Bell off had been made, which, I mean, surprised me. Did it surprise you?
Yes and no. Whether he is taken off because he got skinned by Doak every single time they come up against each other, or simply because he is still coming back from injury, I'm not sure. But I personally would have kept him on and possibly switched him around to that left centre back role, and maybe taken off McGuinness or Mengi after the not great, well, second half of the first half performances. But yeah, I thought it was a relatively reasonable call to make.
And unfortunately, they scored. Well, they scored in the 51st through Finn Azaz, and then they scored 3 minutes later through Bergzog. And it really is, I mean, the story of our season, really. Conceding once and conceding very quickly straight after. As soon as one goes in, the heads just go. And I think that was on display all game.
Yeah, it really was. After that first goal, we just did nothing for the rest of that first half. It was only going one way. I think the commentators pointed it out as well, although they were doing my head in. I will add that point. But yeah, the heads dropped. And I think even us watching those in the crowd who respect them for going up to Middlesbrough, I think those watching at home like myself, once that first goal went in, we were worried and we thought, oh God, this is not going to be pleasant. And I think it was worse than what any of us could have expected, really. It's just, it's so fragile at the moment. I think I think that does come from the manager personally. I think he looks broken. That's that's a personal opinion, not a fact, but I think that then reciprocates it to the players. It has an influence whether they like it or not, whether he likes it or not. Being glum, being down, and coming out with some interesting comments after each game as well when we lose. It's not good for motivation, and for me, I think it needs a change of culture.
Yeah, it's clearly a big issue. I mean, we've spoken about it pretty often on here, but the way Edwards is speaking after games, even before games, is just a polar opposite from what we've seen before. You look at him last season, and even after we were losing to Premier League sides, he was still this bubbly personality, and everyone wanted to speak to him. The media adored him last season, the fans loved him, and I mean, you couldn't help but love him because he was so charismatic. But this season, we'll take this game as an example. Obviously, he sounded like a completely beaten man after this game. But even after we've won this season, I think he's not had energy to the way he's spoken, and he's sounded defeated even when we've won games.
Yeah, he has. I think I'm not sure what the reasons behind that, but I was like, yeah, we won, but it was missing this, it was missing that. Which I think at times he was right. He wasn't wrong in saying some of these things, by the way. But it, it's hard to get up every single week. I think we all know that. I think even as fans, we've been guilty of that this season. But he just looks resigned to defeat. I don't know what the issue is. If I'm honest, that squad at worst should be top 10 for me. I don't see many better lineups really. I think Mengi's one of the best, if not the best in the league. Like I said, Nakamba, Kaminsky, Doughty, Morris, and Eli. It's Chong when he's played in his actual position. Maybe he's probably one of the best in the league. So there's not really a clear and obvious reason why, which it makes you go to the manager and you look at him and go, it has to be coming from him, whether he's doing it intentionally, which I'm sure he's not, but it is happening. It is down. And Morris coming out and saying the players are 100% behind him, I think that's nice of him to do. But it's not their actions. Their actions don't show they're 100% behind the manager. So the comments from him also probably aren't helping, in all honesty.
Yeah, Edwards is getting huge amounts of stick from Luton fans and now externally as well. The likes of not the top 20 have said they think he's going to be the next manager to go, which when you look around us at the other managers that are struggling, the likes of teams like QPR, it's not what you want to hear, but it does feel like it's going to be the case just from what's been said in the past couple of days. But blame has to be put on the players as well because there's been plenty of times this season where they really have not stepped up, and the effort has been nowhere near where it should be. And the game management, even from the players alone, not I know that comes from the manager, but things like Kaminsky coming out and going mental against Portsmouth, Liam Walsh doing that ridiculous tackle against Oxford, just those moments, they are not helping Edwards whatsoever.
No, not at all. And that did actually remind me, I think Liam Walsh is partly lucky to not get sent off against Borough as well. There was an absolutely wild challenge, 2 feet off the floor. It didn't look that high, which I don't know if that was a reason or the ref simply just didn't see it, but it was a abysmal challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking the same thing. I think for some reason Baptiste got a yellow card in that situation where I'm not sure what he even got the yellow for, but yeah, Liam Walsh's tackle was pretty horrendous, and the fact that that's the second time we've seen one of those in the last few games is pretty concerning for someone, especially for someone who's been injured so often. It seems like he's not really learnt from the injuries he's had, and he's got a bit of a dodgy tackle in him, to put it lightly. Maybe he couldn't get that high because simply he is very small, which we can probably say when we've not got the giants of Jamie and Adam on the podcast, because for them, most people are small. But Liam Walsh isn't a very big man, and maybe that's why he got away with it because he is a smaller player.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think Baptiste did make a tackle, but to me it looked like the cleanest tackle as you're going to see. Um, I'm assuming the referee was just too focused on that and didn't notice a Liam Walsh tackle. I think he's probably been told to get amongst it, for lack of a better term, but I think he's very close to going over that line. And for me, he needs to be very careful, considering the fact that we were already. I don't know. I think we were 1-0 down by that point. I can't remember off the top of my head. But when you look at the fact he's been given a chance over someone like Nakamba, you think take your opportunity, play the best you can, and try not to get sent off for the second time this season. But I do think there is an ill discipline amongst our players. I think we've had 3 red cards this season now, and obviously recently coming out is the players now getting a telling off from the FA for saying that they cannot behave. I'm not sure what all that is about, but it is quite funny when you see all the love football protect the game tweets every week from the club. I think they also need to be going to the players.
Yeah, you mentioned there the poor disciplinary record. We were fined £15,000 after the Sunderland game for I think the clash at the end. We've been criticised for having an appalling record, to quote it, of improper conduct by the players and officials, and that's for after being fined a further £15,000 from the Sunderland game. Still, um, the total the club have now been fined in the last 4 years is now £57,000 for ill discipline, which is really quite surprising considering we went all of last season without getting a red card.
Yeah, and I think when you consider Rob Edwards is very rarely booked himself as well, so it was an interesting piece to read from Mike at Luton News. But yeah, the FA don't seem very happy and have said the more it happens, the more we're going to increase these fines. Um, a bizarre one. Again, I don't know if is that to do with the manager. God knows, but I can't remember a situation we've been in before where we've been told off. Well, I suppose take away 30 points, that's a bit of a telling off, but I think a telling off for discipline is a whole different thing. And yeah, bizarre, a bizarre one. Maybe that's why the board are reluctant to move on Edwards to an extent. They have to pay all these fines first.
Yeah, Edwards' future is certainly up in the air. I think it's been said for a few weeks now, but after this game in particular, it's really come to light almost. I mean, you listen to what he said after the game. He sounds like a man who is expecting to go. I thought maybe even Sunday. I mean, potentially on Saturday, but I don't think it was likely as they're to travel back from Middlesbrough. I was actually surprised that nothing was said today, just because the way he was speaking was just the things he said as well. It seemed like did he say if this is it for me, I'm proud of what I've done or something along those lines.
It was, yeah, there's a few things in there as well. Like we've had some really highs, and he sounded like he'd been sacked already. Right, it sounded like it was his resignation speech more than anything else. So I think there just needs to be some clarity, and I think the board have got to step up one way or another. Whether that's saying, look, Rob is our man, back him to hell or high water, or club statement, we've relieved Rob Edwards, etc., etc. I think it needs to go one way or another because it's an international break now as well. There is going to be speculation because there is not much else going on. So that's going to be heightened even further. I think national media as well. Again, because it's international break, there's less general news going on. So something needs to be done one way or another. It's not helping. It's adding fuel to the fire. If anything, it causes speculation on social media and everywhere, really. It creates uncertainty, probably amongst the players as well, where they're going, oh, am I in the choice here? Joe Taylor might be rubbing his hands together and getting some more fireworks ready because he might be like, there we go, it's my time. But look, I think everyone loves Rob. There's no two ways about that. I love Rob. For me, the time is up. You look at it, we've played, I think, out of the bottom 8 teams, we've played all bar Hull. That's quite worrying when we're ending, I think, 2 places above the relegation zone. And we played pretty much all the bottom teams. And we're just about outside that relegation zone. With the squad we've got, like we've mentioned, that's not good enough. I want Rob to succeed, and if he does go, I'd wish him all the best in the rest of his career. If he stays, look, whether I agree with it or not, I will back him because he has done great things to this club. And if he's the manager of this club, as I'm sure all of us will, we will support him.
It's really difficult because we know how much everyone adores Rob Edwards from getting us promoted in the first place to the Premier League, which was only something we could dream of, really, to the way he handled himself with the media, then the whole Tom Lockyer situation as well. I mean, there are very few managers who would still be as loved as he is at this stage when things are struggling as much as they are. But I think everyone's starting to get to the point where, even if it's for his sake, maybe it is time for a change. Just he sounds so defeated, and that can't be good for him personally as well. It must be. I mean, it's clearly having an impact on him because he almost looks like a different person as well.
Yeah, he looks like he's aged 10 years in the space of a couple of months, especially when you consider how he looked last season and all the all the fawning over him on X, or what used to be known as Twitter. So yeah, look, we can't speak to Rob's exact mental state. None of us are psychologists, but he doesn't look in a positive place. And like I said, like it or not, that does have an effect on players. Obviously, we don't see him in the training ground every day. He might be very different, but he's always said, "Look, I'm back to the train. Like, after we lose or win, I'm back to the training ground. I'm looking at the next game." Also, can't be good for yourself. I know that it's the life of a manager, but especially when all this pressure's mounted on you now as well, and then having to do 3 game weeks, it's got to be tough for him. It's got to be tough at the best of times when you're winning, let alone when you have a team that he come out himself and said, "Yeah, we're going for promotion or playoffs this year," and they're sitting just above the relegation zone. That's not going to be easy for him to take. He said he loves the club, and I'm sure he does. So this will be hurting him. There's no two ways about it.
We saw it full time. I mean, for those who haven't seen it, I mean, Deggy's tweet is probably the best way to see the sort of reaction from generally. You saw Edwards come over and put his hands up in what looked like an apology initially, and then he waved to the crowd, which I don't think we've seen him do, unless there was someone in there he knew really well and wanted to wave to them. Otherwise, it looked like he was waving goodbye, some people have said. But it was pretty sour from those who travelled up there, and who can blame them really, because it's a very long way to go for a 12:30 kickoff on Sky. What is it, a 4.5 hour drive?
Yeah, look, it wasn't great viewing, but for me it's completely justified. It was a very poor performance, and I think at times a lack of effort from some of the players on show definitely didn't help that. I got to give big respect to Carlton Morris because he looked like he was quite literally ready to run through players and brick walls, and just he cares, and it was clear to see. Maybe that leadership was needed on the pitch a little bit earlier. Someone like him, a Jordan Clark, a Tom Krause, that bit of passion, Marv as well. So they're well within their rights to boo and say what they like. I think, to be fair, majority of us would be the same if we were there, especially after that long journey. Regarding the wave, I'm not sure. I think he's done that a few times when he's apologised. For me, it was more of a two hands then gone to one hand apology. I don't think it's much more than that. I don't think he'd wave unless he knew he was gone, which, to be fair, maybe he thought he did after that performance.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Morris there. He came on and quite quickly got very much stuck in, got a yellow card, and then proceeded to what the commentators and to everyone else said it looked like he was shouting at the rest of his teammates and telling them in no uncertain terms to. I mean, I think he told them to fuck off at one point. He said a lot of things. He shouts a lot anyway. For quite a softly spoken player, he comes onto the pitch and he really puts himself about. But I think we needed more of that from the outset, and probably all season, to be honest, for players to be really up for it and up for the fight. Not actual fights that we're getting fined for, but like fighting for the team and for the manager.
Yeah, definitely. I think again, Morris one of them players like Edwards that loves the club, and he knows this is nowhere near good enough. And I think it frustrates him as well, not being on the pitch and having to watch it when he knows I can make a difference out there. I could get him up, and yeah, he definitely had some unsavoury words towards someone, if not all the team. But I think a kick up the arse is what's needed. I think some of the players out there should hang their heads in shame. I think I am looking at McGuinness personally. I think two of the goals, I don't know what he's thinking. Again, yes, he's a younger centre half, but he's played a lot of games, especially in the Championship. He should know what to expect. He was given the captain's armband, which again, that worried me a bit when Bell went off because I thought the manager joined the club 2, 3 months ago and he's 23 years old. Is there genuinely not a better fit leader on the pitch, like a Kaminsky, maybe Adebayo, even Baptiste, maybe an extent? It was interesting, and maybe that's a bit of an issue as well. Is there a lack of leadership in the squad without Locks there, without Morris on the pitch, without Clark on the pitch? I think there's so many things that could be put down to what the issue is, and to an extent that does fall on the manager. That can't all just be on the players. They've got to take some responsibility, like Morris was doing after that battering on Saturday. But it was tough. It was tough.
We're going to go to a quick break now, and when we get back, we'll be talking about what Luton Town looks like going forward. But before that, don't forget to check out our merch on oakroadhatter.com. We've got plenty on offer, and I'm sure there's something for everyone. And we've got those chances to win a £25 voucher for the merch. But we'll be back shortly. Welcome back to Oak Road Hatter, where I'm still joined by Lewis, and we're going to be looking at potential futures for Luton Town. Whether or not Edwards stays or goes, the way he's been speaking, it does sound like he believes he could be on his way out shortly. So we thought we'd take a look at the potential options to replace him if he does go. And after some research by myself and Lewis, albeit quite quick research, we've narrowed it down to 5 different options. So, Lewis, we'll start on the one that everyone's been speaking about, and it's because he's just also been sacked, and that is Mark Robins. He did an exceptional job with Coventry City, taking them to the playoff final against us, obviously, where they lost out just from one penalty kick. Bearing in mind they'd been in League Two when he took over. And he's certainly an option that people will be hoping for.
Yeah, personally, he's not the one for me. I think there's no doubting his credentials, of course. I think he's excellent. But he's been a manager for what I think is 7 years being a manager at Coventry. He's probably going to want a little break himself because, to be fair, he probably loves that club and will always hold Coventry dear to him. And he's just been sacked. That's not easy. I don't think he's then going to go, want to get straight back into management. He's probably going to want a little break. And I think that would be fair enough. I think there's no doubt in his credentials. He's excellent. We've had multiple games up against Coventry, ironically having quite a good record. So don't know whether that speaks to his credentials or not, but he can develop players, as we've seen in plenty of players, Sheaf, Gyökeres, Harmer, just to name 3. Excellent manager. By all means, I would take him 100%. I just don't think he's the right man right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's probably too soon for Robins. By all accounts, and it's clear on social media, Coventry fans don't think it was the right decision to let him go. I don't know if you saw the clip from the Enemy gig where thousands of Coventry fans singing his name, which I thought was quite funny as well. But yeah, clearly not a popular decision to let him go. But yeah, I don't think we wanted to go straight back into a job immediately, especially not against a team that's pretty close rivals in the league with his old side at the moment, and with a recent history against them, to say the least. I'm not sure how popular that decision would be with his Coventry following as well. I don't think there's any bad blood between Coventry and Luton fans. I actually think they've got a better relationship than most other fans in the division. I think mutual respect is probably one way to put it. But for him to get sacked by Coventry, then immediately go to another club in a similar position would be pretty unlikely, if you ask me. Another name that has been also fairly recently, out of a job in the Championship and with experience in the Championship is Steven Schumacher. He's an interesting one. He obviously went from Plymouth Argyle to Stoke, where it didn't really work at Stoke, but he's available as it is, and I think it's a potential option.
Oh, for me, he's very high up on that list. Let's put it that way. He went to Stoke. That's your first mistake there. I think, as we've seen, that's been a graveyard for many a manager who have been decent managers. So I'm not really classing him on that. Which again, I don't think he actually did an awful job there either. But obviously, they decided to part ways. There is several rumours about. It seemed like the director of football, sporting director John Walters, seemed to want to get rid of him before the start of the season anyway, and then obviously a few bad games and bang, he was sacked. But when he's at a solid club like Plymouth are and were, where he knows what he's got the squad, he knows that maybe we're not so limited in resources as what we used to be, but probably still fairly limited. And he knows how to get results. He was excellent with that Plymouth team. I think a lot of people also said that Plymouth team were very much good enough to win the league. Simply just Ipswich were better. And as we've seen, they're now in the Premier League. So I don't think that's anything to be ashamed of. He's still fairly young. I believe he's early 40s. Don't quote me on that, but off the top of my head, I want to say early 40s, if not 40 or so. So he's got plenty of years ahead of him. Yeah, he's one I like. He's a very apparent, well, by all accounts, a very good coach, which looks like it's something we might need at the moment. So yeah, I'd be all for Schumacher.
Yeah, in terms of his managerial career, it's not overly broad. He was at Southport as caretaker manager first, but before going to Plymouth, where he was very successful in getting them up to the Championship with a very limited resources, which when you look at, I mean, we've not been spending huge amounts. We have been spending more than we used to, but compared to some of the other teams in the division, it's not loads. So maybe he'd look forward to having a bit of wiggle room, but still having to work with those limited resources as well in what is a very talented squad and a much better squad than what he had at Plymouth Argyle, and a much more settled squad than what he had at Stoke City. So yeah, for me, he's a good option really, and I think a lot of people I think turn their noses up him because he was at Stoke, and it's a difficult. But you can't really judge a manager from their recent Stoke spell. I mean, look at Nathan Jones for example. He left us to go to Stoke, and then was quite quickly gone from Stoke as well. So yeah, I think that's, if you take that out of the equation, he's a very accomplished manager and very popular with Plymouth Argyle fans before he left. The next one is someone that, if Jamie was here, I'm sure he'd have plenty to say, but unfortunately he's not here. But it's Lee Carsley. Obviously, most well known for his very brief spell with England recently. Obviously, didn't get the full time role, but you can't really blame him for going for a top class manager. But Carsley's clearly a talented coach or manager who's done very well with the England youth setup, and I think maybe going for someone promising like that is a good option.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think you look at Rob Edwards as well. He come down that FA path with Richie Kyle. So it's clearly something that the board take into consideration. It's difficult to know what level he can truly manage at. So it would be a risk because I think he might have managed before. I don't know too much about him again. This is where we could do with Jamie. But the under 21 is very impressive in that in them couple of games of all the recent ones, very impressive with England. It would be a very different style of play to what we play now. So again, the board might have to take into consideration because I don't know if we've got them sort of players. I wouldn't be surprised to see him play a Mario Belt at actual centre back in the two because of his on the ball ability. But I think, as we know, as good as Tedden is, he's not your ball playing defender. It's a difficult one, especially given the situation we're in. Can he get in? Can he motivate a senior squad? And can he get the results necessary? I do really like Carsley, but I think on the other side of the coin is it would also be a risk.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of those ones that he's not got the experience at championship level, really. So it is a big risk going for someone like him, who you're just purely going off what his recent spell with the England team, which is very different players to what we've got available for selection. Um, the next one is one that Luton fans, I think, would absolutely love. And it's only come about, his name, recently because he's been linked with that Coventry job. And that is Alan Sheehan, who is currently a member of the coaching staff or assistant manager or something at Swansea City. Um, so we haven't been linked with him, but for him to be linked with Coventry, it means he's available. Certainly seems like he's available, and Luton could definitely do worse than going for a former player.
Definitely. I think realistically, even a Premier League assistant manager, maybe not a top end, we could probably go and get one of them with the club that we are. We are a team with a very decent championship squad. So I think getting Sheehan as an assistant at Swansea wouldn't be an issue. I think that's cost wise as well, to be fair. Against that, similar to Carsley, that experience, but obviously he's got even less experience than Carsley, albeit at men's football. So it would be a risk. Certainly, I know he's held by all accounts in very high esteem as a coach, and he has got that UEFA Pro license. Again, I don't know how much that means. It could just be a symbol certificate that says "well done," but he knows the club, and I think that's a big thing in itself. At the moment, we kind of need to go back to these Luton roots of what it means to play for Luton. You've got to work hard, strong as a team, strong unit. As John Sills say, stronger the team, stronger the team. So it's not a bad idea, but again, it is that risk of how good would he be as a manager? Who is he going to get in as assistants? Is he going to get them experienced heads around him? I think it's more a case of it was thrown out there because he was an ex-player more than his credentials.
Yeah, it'd be a big risk. It'd be quite a popular risk, I imagine. Perhaps we could see him bringing in assistants like Danny Hilton, who's currently doing his coaching badges. It would be quite funny if we had a coaching team of Sheehan and Hilton, maybe stick Glenn Ray or someone in there as well. Pelly's doing his coaching badges at the moment. Maybe it's get the whole gang back together for a few weeks. But no, I think it would be a big risk. And at the moment, in the situation we're in, it's probably not a risk worth taking, just because if it goes wrong, you don't want to sour that positive relationship they've got with the club. The final option I just wanted to discuss was a manager who's currently in a job and currently doing very well in a job, and that is Lincoln City's Michael Scabala. He hasn't been there long actually, but he's taken them up the leagues very very quickly. They're currently in the playoff positions after very narrowly missing out last season, and he's a manager that plays three at the back with quite attacking wing back, well, very attacking wing backs actually, and a very very front forward football.
Yeah, Scabala's one I like. He's got that experience in the men's game. He's plays a very similar style of football, so I don't think the setup or the squad we've got would be an issue. Um, so you look at them two things, and that's a big two positives straight off the bat. He's at Lincoln. Realistically, is he going to cost that much to get him away from there? Probably not. Would it be an issue to get him away from there? Again, probably not. So that again, the only red kind of flag is he isn't the most experienced of managers. He hasn't managed at a higher level than what he's at now in League One, but he's doing a very good job with Lincoln. I think they lost a few big players last year as well after an impressive season, and they're still going at it again. So again, I think he's a very good shout. I think I'd be surprised if he wasn't towards the top of that list, because I'm whether we like it or not, they are probably building a list even if we stick with him because you've got to be prepared. Yeah, again, Finn, you might know a bit more about him than me with your time at Lincoln, so I'll hand back over to you.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, I covered it. I was actually there before he was the manager there, but I have actually seen them play a few times since he was manager. And by all accounts, from a mate of mine who covers Lincoln quite regularly, they are a very, very good side to watch under him. He's hugely popular there. He's very, very popular with the fans. He's quite. He's not very outspoken. He's pretty quiet in terms of on the touchline, but he has a. I guess the way he plays does the talking for him. It's very front footed. At times last season, they lined up with three strikers playing in the same starting lineup. One of those being Joe Taylor in the second half of the season, with Ben House dropping into midfield. But yeah, you mentioned there he plays three at the back. They actually play with a 3-5-2 with one very, very attacking wing back or winger in Enrico Hackett on the left, which is almost reminiscent of Alfie in terms of how attacking he is. But Alfie probably has a bit more defensive ability. Well, definitely has more defensive ability than Hackett. And then Tendai Darika on the right, who's much more defensive in terms of the way he plays. Interestingly, they also have a player who was a left back playing at left centre back in Sean Rowan. So it almost fits perfectly into someone like Bell playing there. Rowan is bigger, but Bell is much more experienced, and he's probably the most consistent player in our side most weeks. So it would be an interesting appointment because there would be very little change in terms of the setup with the formation, as far as I can tell. Maybe he'd move a few players around and bring in someone, and maybe Chong's role would change slightly just because of him wanting to have a more stable midfield three. Their last starting midfield had McGrandles, Jeffries, and Hamilton, which is much more of a three central midfielders rather than an attacking midfielder or winger. I don't know how it depends how you view Chong, but it is an interesting option, and it would be, I think, it would be a very forward thinking decision. It's definitely future planning. But we'd love to know what your thoughts are on who you'd like to see take over if Rob Edwards is to go. Let us know in the comments or tweet us at Oak Road Hatter and tell us which manager, as unrealistic or realistic as you'd like to see take over. And I'm sure there'll be some really out there shouts. But before that, we've got our £25 voucher giveaway for our Oak Road Hatter merch. And there's three chances of winning. The first chance, subscribe to Oak Road Hatter on YouTube, Like and comment on any video published between Sunday the 3rd of November and Friday the 22nd of November, which will be the Hull City preview pod. You have one chance to enter per episode, so if you like and comment on several episodes between those dates, you can multiply your chances of winning. The second opportunity is follow Oak Road Hatter on Twitter or X. Like and repost the competition tweet. This will be pinned on our profile, and tag 3+ people in the comments of the post. And finally, place any order between Sunday the 3rd of November and kick off for Luton vs Hull City at 3 p.m. on Saturday the 23rd of November. The more orders means more entries, so you'll have a better chance of winning. But from myself and from Lewis, that is everything for today, so thank you for listening.